next presentation is from Professor Dr. Thomas Schlegel. Thomas Schlegel is the head of the Institute for Ubiquitous Mobility Systems, and he is talking about smart windows and ubiquitous traveler information systems. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction. So we go back to research a bit. The topic is smart windows and ubiquitous traveler information systems. The reason for that is that the institute I'm heading is talking about ubiquitous mobility systems, which means mobility gets more ubiquitous. You don't have single systems that are not interconnected, but the other way around. We are going to a more or less world of systems that are closely interconnected, exchanging information, letting new scenarios come true where you get from one vehicle to the other without losing any information or connection. And this also means for us that we have three big dimensions in which we are doing research, and which I think that are very closely interconnected. And this is the interaction, which means the human perspective. What are the people doing? What are the people thinking? The systems perspective. So how do the systems work? How they built, how they are interconnected, and the models world, which means where does the intelligence come from? How do we model the context, the environment we are traveling in? Just a short information about where we're coming from. So we're from the Faculty of Information Management and Media at the Karlsruhe University of Applied Science. So we're more on the applied research field. And we have I think, quite innovative bachelor and master program where we teach transport system management. We have also some students here who might be happy to hear that. And the Institute talks about, or does research in these three topics: humans, interaction. So this encompasses human-computer interaction, usability, user experience, and also what we call mobility experience. So if you're a mobile person, you're on your way, there's always a lot of psychology, emotions, and other things that play a major role when you select how to travel, how to be mobile. The second thing is, and which is not so common to be interconnected with the community that does research in interaction, is models. So we are trying to find new models, new ways to model the context of people traveling. So the passengers, for example, find themselves in very different situations on their way, on their journey, especially if you're talking about intermodality, multimodality, and things like that. And we're talking about systems, which means, for example, cyber-physical systems, which is a very big topic for transport, because you always have a real world and a virtual space of information. And when you lose connection between these two parts, then you're in big trouble. So you know all these examples where there's a train coming and it says 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, and it's gone and you have never seen it. There has been a big difference between the model, the information behind, and the real train. So that is why we think this is very important. The Karlsruhe University of Applied Science, just to mention that, is quite a big university for applied science, the biggest in Baden-Württemberg, and has 7 transport professors and many more professors that do research in similar fields like autonomous vehicles and energy efficient driving, etc. And it also has quite a lot of course, master's and bachelor programs and a strong engineering tradition. So what we do is more or less business, economics, and mainly engineering technology. So back to the research and the topic of today. The public displays in public transport are playing more and more a major role because, as you can see around when you're walking here in the fair, there are displays everywhere. In every booth, in every stand, there are lots of displays, mobile displays, big displays, projections, and so on, which surround us. So displays have become ubiquitous, and this means that we have technology around us for visualization, for interaction, for communication of information in a visual way. This also offers opportunities like doing route planning with these displays, tourism information support services and so on, and many applications that have not been possible before. Like in our lab, for example, we have a nearly 100 inches display of multi-touch, so you can work with 2 or 3 or 4 people together cooperatively, find your way, plan your trip, etc., which is today expensive, but as you have seen with lots of the technologies, they become more and more cheap, and for this reason ubiquitous. So I'd like to share some words about a research project we are doing here in Karlsruhe with also the local partners. It is the Smart MMI project for model and context-based mobility information on smart public displays and mobile devices in public transport. So the new thing about that is we are now not only talking about displays, but we are talking about visual information in the train, in the tram. There's a window and you can put information there. So far so good. The technology is more or less ready, so it's possible to have information within the windows, within the glass, with some extra technology for making it dark inside, dark outside, if you need it, for example, if there's sunlight against it, etc. But the new thing is that you can put information right in the environment of the user. You can connect it with mobile devices, you can have your personal information on the mobile device, and you can have the general information, or for example, even scenarios like augmented reality. Let's see, or what's this church about as a tourist? So you will get information directly in the window, informing you about the environment that the sites that are passing by. The general idea about this is, as the windows become, or the smart windows like displays will become more and more ubiquitous, you can use them also for information, but the big research topic is, what information will you display? You will disturb the people if you put a lot of information on it. So the other thing is that you will need real-time information. You will need the right contextual information. So the situation of the user is very important to select the information that you display on these kind of displays. So again, we go back to the perspective, we need information about the people, so about the users, about the passengers on the train, on the tram. And the first step in the project was to identify persona, which means users or user groups that share some common attributes, some common interests, etc. Like, for example, if you take Carla on the upper right side, she comes from Spain, she doesn't speak German, she's traveling here in this nice city in Karlsruhe as a tourist, so she will have very different requirements than a commuter going the same way every day. So he will be maybe only interested if there is an accident or so, and he will have to change trains to be in time at the office. And with this persona, we developed scenarios to see what information are the people using, what information do they need in a specific situation. Like, for example, here in 2 scenarios, this Bernd Lawrence normally uses a car. So we also have these users in public transport, normally using the car, not having any much knowledge about how does public transport work. You have an ad hoc transfer because his car breaks down, so he's forced more or less to use public transport, maybe one of the first times in his life, and so he needs support in transferring. It's a different scenario, like with Christian Peters, he's restricted in mobility because he's disabled, and there's a breakdown of elevators at the stations. So there's he needs alternatives. He needs to maybe exit at the next station to find his way through the environment. So this is one scenario, one project that we are dealing with. I will have a talk this afternoon later on where I can share a bit more information. I don't want it to take too much time away here from the other speakers. We have some other research projects that are currently finished or in the phase of finishing, where we did a standardization for Germany for communication to passengers. So how do passengers communicate with their mobile devices to, for example, the vehicle, or to a background system with trip advisory service, and there are already standards by VDV for all the German national information, more or less, along the trip. Dynamo was the dynamic and seamless mobility information, where we introduced social media functions into public transport and mobile interfaces. And Synapsis is a more rural-oriented system where we do agenda planning. So you take your agenda, and the agenda leads you to your day. And where there's, for example, changes in your journey, the system will adapt and will let you know, for example, go to the pharmacy now, not in the evening, because you have half an hour here. It's just right next to you, and you have the time, and will get your medicine, for example, that you wanted to buy. So there's different research projects we are doing, and if you want to hear more about this, come to our TRK booth 120, just to the entrance. 14:15 to 2:15 p.m. we'll have a talk about the transparent display, for example, that you can also visit at the booth. I would be happy to see you there and have a discussion with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Thomas from the University of Applied